We all have access to Netflix, Amazon, Hotstar, Z5s of the world. That's essentially VOD. And I wanted to talk about one of the most talked about application of machine learning in VOD, which is the whole recommendation engine. So that's going to be my topic for today. In a different way, I want you to look at this in terms of how data as a set has a journey that moves up to a recommendation system, which can be applied to any vertical, whether it is videos, whether it is e-commerce, anything which is digitally bought or consumed. But for me, currently, I'm going to talk about this journey using video content as the hero of the story. Uh, so getting on, this is the first thing that I wanted to sort of clarify and just sort of simplify. So what is essentially machine learning? We humans learn through our experiences, and we moderate our future behaviors basis what we have seen in the past. In the exact same manner, what machines or what systems do is they learn from data that is being fed to them, and that's about it. Uh, you know, the only thing that machine learning differs from human learning is humans rely on experiences, whereas machines or systems essentially rely on data. So data is probably the first and the foremost thing that we should talk about a little bit more. What essentially data does is that it actually trains the algorithms. It helps build the models. And then once a model has been built, the future data, which is the input data, starts to get fed into that model, which essentially leads to predictions. And hence the whole loop around, and obviously we add the whole loop of feedback and evaluation, and that essentially becomes machine learning. If I have to simplify this, most of us use Excel sheets, and one of the formula that everybody uses is if, then, and else. Now just think about this, that if, then, else is the model which you as a human created basis the past data that you saw, and you created that model. And then once you applied it on an Excel sheet, then any other new input data that's kept coming in that column or in that row, you started to give predictions. So if X is greater than 5, mark the cell red. If X is greater than 10, or if X is a text, say valid. If X is a number, say invalid, so on and so forth. So that's exactly what machine learning is also about. You see what has been the past data, you use that past data to build the model, build the algorithm, and then you wait for the future data to come in into that model so that you can predict what could be the behavior of the system going forward. So that's essentially the whole journey from data up to predictions. Now, what do we do about predictions? Or why is prediction relevant? Why is prediction relevant in our industry? Uh, you know, if you guys can unmute yourself and just say yes to this, how many of you relate to this? If people can unmute themselves, or Nipun, if you guys can tell me how many of you actually relate to this, where a lot of time, when we want to watch something, actually goes wasted into what we, where we spend time in terms of finding what to watch. And the amount of time we actually end up spending on watching is much smaller than the amount of time we actually end up spending on finding what to watch. This is where in our industry, or this is why in our industry, in the video on demand industry, predictions become extremely important. Prediction becomes important because I need to essentially personalize your experience so that when you log into any VOD app, whether it's Hotstar, Amazon, Netflix, MX Player for that matter, I have been able to already personalize the experience for you so that this time that you end up spending on finding what to watch is kind of minimalized. So from data, we moved into prediction. From prediction, the application of prediction is essentially personalization of that essential data for you. Now, how do I really, so what is exactly personalization for us? You have to, these two words are used uh, a lot of times in tandem, and we tend to confuse ourselves with customization and personalization. There is a very, very clear difference between what customization is and what personalization is. Customization is very, very individual, one on one. There was a time when you could go to Dell online store and you could customize exactly what laptop do you need. You could define the RAM, you could define the memory, you could define the screen size, you could define the color of the laptop, so on and so forth. So theoretically, when customization is in play, every individual, each and every individual can actually have a different product, whether it's a different laptop, whether it's a different playlist, whether it's a different movie recommendation, so on and so forth. But customization is not scalable. We are talking about millions of users on a daily basis. No system, no application, no organization can ever design itself to give fully customized solutions to each and every user. That's where the role of personalization becomes extremely important. So think of it like this, that personalization is mass customization. So you don't customize for every individual, but you actually create different PG sets. You actually create different user buckets. So there is one user bucket who is absolutely, about adrenaline driven content. So that set is separate from a set, let's say, people who completely watch rom-com movies, or completely different from a set of people who only watch superhero movies. So instead of defining exact recommendation for every individual, which is customization, most of the systems are designed to drive personalization, which is saying that, if I broadly know your preferences, I will bucket you into a separate set where a lot of other people are also, included in that set. And then I will give us personalized recommendation around that set rather than as an individual. Customization by default is, of course, far, far more accurate because it's about one on one. Personalization is probably 60 to 70% accurate, but it gives you immense scale and hence kind of makes up for it. Spotify recommending you, next things to listen to basis what you have watched is a perfect example of a personalized engine. Whereas you creating your own drag and drop playlist on an Apple Play Store or an Apple Music, iMusic, iTunes, that's customization. So customization cannot be done by a system. Customization is done by individuals on their own, and hence is not part of machine learning as a system. Personalization is done by organizations, systems, recommendation engines. So let's talk about, so we kept talking about, personalization. What is essentially personalization doing? Personalization is essentially helping you make or helping make recommendations for you. So when I personalize your experience, I don't only personalize what you have already done, but I also communicate to you what, as a system, I feel that you may like to watch next. That's where role of recommendation comes in. So I'll keep sort of connecting the dots. So we talked about data. Data leads to predictions. Prediction is important to make personalization. And the application of personalization is to give you personalized recommendations. So what is essentially, recommendation? We loosely use this word recommendation way too often. But recommendation is nothing but predicting your next behavior basis what you have recently done on the system. That's about it. Multiple applications of recommendation engine that we recommendation systems that we see on our day-to-day life. A few examples are when you go and buy, let's say, a mobile phone on Amazon, it starts to throw you recommendations about, buying a mobile cover, a mobile charger, a mobile stand, so and so forth, or maybe headphones for that matter. So what Amazon has done is it looked at your recent behavior, which was buying a stuff, buying a phone in this case, and then started recommending you, saying that you probably would also need this in the future. Why don't you bundle it up? Screen guards, they keep selling screen guards as well, right? The second recommendation engine that we keep seeing is, when you go to Facebook or Instagrams or any short video platforms, if you end up watching one type of video, let's say you end up watching sports videos, or you end up watching food videos, travel videos, the next time when you log in, or probably immediately within that scroll itself, you will start to see more of such videos, or you will start to see recommendations of following certain pages where mostly these sort of videos are uploaded. So that's another recommendation engine, where it is not even saying कि you may like this, it's directly showing you that, uh, which is more explicit in that way. A slightly more implicit recommendation is, of course, the whole VOD, where once you watch a specific show, or once you show a certain type of viewing behavior, the next time when you log into a Netflix or an Amazon Prime or a Hotstar, it starts tweaking the behavior of what what it shows you on the top row of the app. So that these are all different examples of recommendation engines. Another recommendation is, when you if you frequently use, let's say, an Ola or an Uber app, next time when you open the app at a specific time of the day, it will actually almost prompt you to figure out what you want to enter into your destination. For example, people like us who used to travel a lot to office every day before this whole thing happened, every time when I used to open my app, let's say 9:30 in the morning, Ola almost predicted that behavior and started to prompt me to put my office address in the destination bar. These are all examples of recommendations, which is essentially looking at what you've done in the past and predicting what may be your next step of actions, and hence putting those things forward to you, so that your chances of transaction, your chances of engaging with that product improves a bit. So this leads to, so while this is recommendation, these are different types of recommendation. Let's now start talking about what actually goes behind, these recommendation engines. So broadly speaking, there are two types of, there are a lot of layers to this, and I'm obviously simplifying this. But broadly speaking, there will always be two types of recommendation engines. And I'm obviously talking about, I'm just taking video as a reference here, but this can be applied to anything else as well. There is collaborative filter based recommendation engines, or there is content based filter engine. Content based filtering engine is probably a slightly more simpler way of, creating recommendation engines. It's very simple. It says that if you've already watched something and you've liked it, if I show you something similar to that content, there is a high chance that you would actually like that content. It's like saying that, if I have watched, let's say, Game of Thrones on Hotstar, you are very likely to watch, let's say, Vikings on Netflix. Or if I watched, let's say, Friends, you are likely to watch, let's say, How I Met Your Mother, or, Two and a Half Men, or Big Bang Theories. So this is purely about what you did, what you watched, what are other shows, what is other content similar to that show, and let me throw it up to the user. And likely there are chances that you would eventually end up watching that content. That's called content based filtering, which is only about that one user and his or her behavior. Whereas collaborative filter is slightly more evolved in that way. So what it does is it first finds a set of similar users, which is done basis their history of content consumed. So for example, let's say user A and user B have both watched war movies, a bunch of war movies. So what system starts to do is it starts to tag user A and user B into one set because they have almost their overlap of what they've watched is very high, and hence it becomes part of one collaborative set. Now let's say user 1 or user A, sorry, ended up coming and watching yet another movie. It may or may not be a war movie. So this is the fundamental difference between collaborative filter and content filter. Now I am no more concerned about the content itself. I am concerned now about the other user. So for example, if you know Ram or a Sham, Ram watched all 10 war movies, Sham also watched all 10 war movies. Ram and Sham have been clubbed as one user set. Now, one fine day, Ram decides to go and watch an absolutely rom-com movie. System, a basic collaborative filter, would actually recommend a rom-com movie to Sham as well. So this is where, while it is more evolved, there are certain deficiencies to this system. But what this system generally assumes is someone like a Ram would any which way not ever go and watch a rom-com movie because typically collaborative filter and content-based filter work hand in hand. So while I'm recommending uh, Sham the movies that Ram has watched, most likely to Ram, I may have anyways already recommended a war movie in any case. So very likely these guys are going to move in the same sphere. The fundamental difference between collaborative filter and content-based filter is that collaborative filter primarily works on mapping people to another set of people, whereas content-based filter essentially looks at mapping movie to the other set or a TV show to the other set. That's a fundamental difference. Most of the recommendation systems kind of work with various permutation and combinations of all possible types of recommendation engines. So it may have a layer of collaborative filter. It may have a layer of content-based filter as well. Degree of each filter or the degree of the impact each filter may have may keep varying. And that is where you start to form different recommendation systems. Recommendation systems are nothing but combination of various different recommendation engines combined together to eventually give one final recommendation to the user. Moving forward, talking about recommendation systems, I wanted to use Netflix as a case study. Uh, of course, for the obvious reason that they are probably pioneers in the kind of recommendation systems that they have been built. So, from a purely movie recommendation or a content recommendation point of view, there are at least 5 different recommendation systems that combine together to make the overall Netflix recommendation system. Plus, there is another level of recommendation system that comes into picture, which is not about what content you would watch, but what poster you will end up, seeing on your app. So I'll talk about all these 6 recommendation systems one on one. So the first one, and probably the most important recommendation system that Netflix has, is something called personalized video ranker, or something which we call as PVR. Uh, the objective, so all these recommendation systems have fundamentally similar way of operating. But the only thing that differentiates between all these, or at least the top 5, is the objective each recommendation engine is trying to solve. So I'll go back to this. So the first one, which is personalized video ranker, the objective of this particular system is to make sure that when you log into the app, how can I arrange my entire movie catalog in the best possible way to give you best possible search and watch experience. So PVR, or personalized video ranker, ideally tries to set up the entire catalog of, let's say, thousands of videos that app has in a way that this is best suited to that set of users. It typically tries to do this in two ways, apart from obviously the image, is that when you look at, especially if you look at a Netflix, you will see that vertically different genres or different types are first listed down. It could be drama, it could be British drama, it could be war action, it could be rom-com, it could be horror. So the vertical ordering of genres is the first set, that first output. The second output is what are the titles or what are the content pieces that you will see in each of the rows. So what would you see in drama? What would you see in British action? What would you see in, let's say, horror? And then the third is that how are those titles ranked from first to the last? What would you see in the extreme left? What would you see subsequently, and so on and so forth? So personalized video ranker essentially tries to sort out the entire catalog. It's like a mosaic puzzle. When you log in, you refresh. Every time a new user comes in, the entire piece of the puzzle shifts in a way that the entire catalog is still visible, but just that everybody will see different sets of rows. Everybody will see different titles in each row, and everybody will see different order of those titles in that row. That is a massive, massive task when it comes to building this whole personalized video ranker. The next type of video ranker or a recommendation system that is in play is something called top N video ranker. Top N video ranker is something which they try to give you almost a flavor of customization, which is essentially saying that amongst my entire catalog, what are those top N or what are those top 10 in this case, TV shows or movies that are most likely for that user to be watching. So this is something that everybody sees, like top picks for Karan, top picks for Anu, top picks for Nipun, so on and so forth. This is a very, very small. So, for example, if you look at Netflix, it probably has about 20 to 25,000 video titles active at any given day. Now, out of those 25, 30,000 video titles, what are those top 10 titles that you are most likely to watch is something that shows up. That is the job of top N video ranker recommendation engine. The next system in play is something called trending now. Believe you me, no one in the if you guys want to try out, you can try out at your own backend right now. None of you would see exactly the same trending card. Does that mean that for everybody is trending different? No. How this actually works is that it works in two layers. The first layer is where I try, as a system, we try to find out what are the top, let's say, 100 titles which are most popular right now on the app. This is a function of various parameters. How many of you have clicked the poster, how many of you actually watched it, how many of you have probably rated it, so on and so forth. First, it creates a pool of top 100 or top 200 most popular titles on the system. And then amongst those 100, it tries to do a top N video ranker for you. So basically, it will say that out of those 100 popular shows, which may or may not be something that is part of your viewing preference, which are more likely for you to be able to also consume. So the difference between top N video ranker and trending now is, of course, the difference in the objective. But very likely in trending now, you will see certain titles which you would have generally not actually consumed, or which are not really perfect fit for the kind of preferences you have. Whereas in top N video ranker, most likely everything is any which way something that you would at least give a shot to. The idea behind trending now is to help you try out something new, but in a slightly subtle way that, we at least give you something which is still something that you may like. So it picks up most popular content, and amongst that, it tried to find out what are those top 10 titles that you may still like to watch. And that is what kind of gets showed up here. Moving forward, this is something that everybody sees, right? Continue to watch or continue watching. See, as a consumer set, VOD system knows that most of the users will try out lot of content pieces, maybe watch first 5 minutes of a show or first 5 minutes of a movie, and then may choose to not continue to watch it forward. So let's say hypothetically, as a user, I may try out 100 titles. 100 is probably too big, but maybe 10 titles. Try out like a 2 minute, 3 minute, teaser of that content, and then eventually decide that the 11th is the one that I want to watch. Very, very Baskin Robbins sort of an experience, right? You try out various flavors and then you decide which one to watch. What Netflix does is that it does not forget what are those 9 or 10 shows that you ended up discarding. What it does is that every time those 9 or 10 discarded shows happen, that goes into one common pool of your discarded shows. And what it starts to do is, as your user behavior starts to evolve on the app and the system starts learning what are the kind of movies you watch, amongst those discarded pool, it starts to show up something that may still be slightly relevant to you. Similar to what happens in trending, the only difference is that in the trending, I'm picking up from the pool which is popular and then finding your likely preference. In this case, the pool that I'm looking at from is the one that you've already discarded and just trying to see if something may still work for you. So essentially, amongst all the videos, so the objective that this particular recommendation engine is trying to solve is amongst all the videos that you've already tried out, which ones are you most likely to resume? And it starts to show up those recommendations as well. The next one is about something very, very, so this is probably the most rudimentary recommendation engine that exists in a system like Netflix. This is very, very content-based filtering kind of a recommendation system, where it says that because you watched something, I'm also recommending you something like this. So it's Netflix way of apologizing if the recommendation does not work for you, because I'm not sure whether you wanted to watch this, but you know what? Because you watch Friends, I'm telling you to go watch New Girl. I'm telling you to watch, let's say, Two and a Half Men. If you don't like it, my bad, but I'm not sorry about this because hey, you watched Friends, and all I'm saying is that if you watch Friends, maybe this may also something suit to you. So this particular element of Netflix is the most basic, rudimentary, and the least evolved recommendation system. But it's a good way for a lot of users to relate to it. A lot of us actually think this way. We humans are not that complex in that way. We do think like this कि हाँ ऐसा देखा था, ऐसा कुछ और मिल जाए तो मैं देख सकता हूँ. That's exactly what video to video similarity engine does for you. So these are the 5 broad recommendation systems that are about combining or that are about giving you what content you should watch. Now comes the most interesting part of the 6th recommendations engine is actually the artwork personalization. Take a moment to look at these 2 sets that I put out here. These are 2 very, very popular shows on Netflix, Unbreakable and Stranger Things. Just look at each poster. I'll just give you like a few seconds to have a look at these. For every show, so I've been in a role where we used to sell shows to Netflix, where we used to basically syndicate shows to Netflix, and it was an absolute pain in the ass experience because for every title or every content that I had to sell to Netflix, we had to at least come up with 6 to 10 different posters poster options that Netflix used to pick up from. While it's an absolute Herculean task to do this, but that's a great way to define the user experience. What Netflix does is it tries to maximize the chances of you to click through a poster by changing the poster basis your preferences. If you like gory images, it will probably show you the bottom right poster of a Stranger Thing. If you are into animals, it will show you shows poster like bottom left of Unbreakable. So it kind of identifies what kind of things tickle you, tick you off, tick you on in terms of maximizing your click through rate. So CTR, or as we call it as click through rate, which is how many people saw something and what percentage of that actually clicked on that poster, is called click through rates. So the idea is to maximize the click through rate of each recommended show to you by defining the artwork also. Couple of examples of how that actually happens. So if you look at the first two rows, there are eventually two different posters of Pulp Fiction. One with Uma Thurman and the other one with John Travolta. If you have watched, let's say, a Kill Bill or a Prime or a Paycheck, where you have in a way indicated your preference of what starcast you like, the poster changes accordingly. If you have watched, let's say, Killing Season or an Urban Cowboy or a Grease, system has recognized that probably John Travolta works for you, and accordingly it will show you a Pulp Fiction poster with John Travolta in it. That's one possible way this is done. The second is genre specific. So if you look at this last two rows carefully, there are two different posters of Good Will Hunting, but both the posters are about two different themes within the movie. So the first row is more about romance or romantic comedy to a large extent. So if you have watched some of the other movies like Eternal Sunshine or a Serendipity, it kind of assumes that as a consumer, rom-com or romantic movies kind of work for you. So it will show you that part of the poster design. And if you are into more, let's say, comic, brozone, boys only kind of movies, it shows you a very different poster artwork for Good Will Hunting. This part of there is a lot of blogs that Netflix itself has published around their whole artwork personalization. What I could make out was at least two very different ways in which this whole demarcation around starcast and genre based personalization is achieved. There could actually be more, but these are two basic examples that I wanted to highlight around how poster design could actually change so that you're more likely to click through it. So broadly speaking, these are the 6 recommendation systems that are almost like a gold standard of recommendations engines in VOD platforms or in VOD industry. Most of the other OTT apps have started to follow a mix of either doing everything or mix of doing few things, and everybody is still trying to figure out what is the best combination of what recommendation engines to use. But the idea is to keep moving forward towards giving you as precise recommendation through machine learning as possible. So that's the broad, gamut of what machine learning is. I wanted to now sort of summarize this into a conversation where, since we started from data, I wanted to show you how exactly this whole story sort of comes together. So let's talk about data first. This is typically the user data that gets captured. Preferences. So when you typically log into any of these OTT apps for the first time, it will typically ask you for your preferences. Netflix does, Amazon does, Hotstar does. It will ask you, what do you watch? What languages do you watch? Do you like comedy? Do you like action? So on and so forth. So that is your initial preferences, which obviously starts to fade out as your user experience starts to evolve as you start to use the app going forward. Ratings is basically what kind of rating do you give to the movies that you watch on the platform? Thumbs up, thumbs down, so on and so forth. Watch history, of course, what you have already watched on the platform. Uh, what did you watch today? What did you watch yesterday? So on and so forth. Uh, Watch recency is extremely, interesting. Watch recency is basically saying that if 10 days back you watched a rom-com and 2 days back you watched a horror, if I have to choose between what to show you as the next recommendation, I'm most likely going to show you horror first and then going to show you a rom-com. So what you watch the latest has higher weightage in that way when it comes to building the algorithm or building the data for your algorithm. Device mapping. What do you watch on a laptop? What do you watch on a mobile phone? What do you watch on a tab? So that next time around, if you are using that particular device, it will start to show you recommendations of what you watched when that same device was used earlier. Extremely crucial because if you look at its real life applications. So when you're traveling, when you are in the morning, metro or a train or a bus, you are most likely going to watch snackable content, short length content using your mobile phone. Next time around, when you've opened your laptop, I would ideally not show you that kind of content because most likely when you've opened your laptop or your smart TV, you're aiming for a late night long watch. And that time, I would probably show you, let's say, a movie, which is probably longer length or longer duration in that way. Uh, Chronological mapping also kind of works together with device mapping. So chronological mapping is what did you watch at what time of the day, what day of the week, whether it's a weekend or a weekday. All that, for how long did you watch around what time? So all that also kind of gets captured in terms of what to show you over a weekend versus what to show you, let's say, what to show you over a weekend afternoon versus, let's say, what to show you on a weekday morning. So all this also kind of gets captured. But this is all user data. Now, how do I actually use what you have done? I, I kind of map this with the content data, with the title data, so that I know, for example, what genre, how much did you watch recently? What length did you watch on what time of the day? What era of the movie did you watch? Or what kind of ratings do you give to a specific type of an era? What kind of preferences did you give in terms of language? So user data has to be mapped with the title data, with the content data, genres, hyper-specific micro-genres. This is something that Netflix is unique in doing. In fact, immediately after this call, I'll actually share you a link to everybody. There are more than 27,000 micro-genres. So we know genres. We know genres: action, drama, comedy, horror, thriller, so on and so forth. What Netflix has done is that it has further divided these into various smaller micro genres. It could be something like visually appealing British drama or techno-color Japanese anime action. So it has combined various nuances of movie making or movies visuals into forming these micro genres. So basically, the more specific you get, the more finer you get in terms of defining your genres, which is through hyper specific micro genres, the more accurate you kind of become in terms of your recommendation. We talked about how actresses play a role. There is also a very interesting way a lot of apps have started doing is cast combination. Uh, so let's say, Dhawan and Govinda kind of movies, or maybe let's say Farhan Akhtar and Hrithik Roshan as a combination works well, or a Kishore Kumar and a Baljeet Saini combinations. So a lot of times, subconsciously, we watch or we have preference of watching movies of a specific director made with a specific set of cast. Netflix and most of the OTT engines have started to even capture this length of the show, whether it's a 10-minute show, whether it's a 25-minute show, 40-minute show, or a 2-hour movie, is also kind of captured. Era is in, do you like 90s movies? Do you like 80s movies? Do you like black and white? Do you like techno colors, so on and so forth? And of course, languages, English, Hindi, regional, international languages. So what these two things eventually do is that your user data maps with your title data and kind of feeds into the basic algorithm of all these machine learning or recommendation engines, whether it is personalized video ranker, top end video ranker, trending, continue to watch, or video to video. So user data and title data mapping is the feed or is the input data into all of these recommendation engines, which eventually together arrive at what is the list of TV shows and movies that I need you to recommend. Once that happens, the next thing that kind of takes place is basically about identifying. Once you've already identified what kind of movies you want to watch, I also know your preferences around what kind of posters that work for you. This combining with the list eventually arrives at your personalized artwork, which eventually gives you the on app recommendation. What do you mean by on app recommendation? Is basically not just the titles, but also the posters that show up on the title. So that's broadly how the entire ecosystem of any recommendation engine works. It starts from data. It starts from your data. It maps it to the content data to eventually build different personalization recommendation engines to eventually give you one final list of recommendations, and then you can add a layer of poster or artwork personalization, which eventually then finally shows up on what you actually see on your app. That's the overall ecosystem of how machine learning drives these recommendation engines using the data and eventually giving you a personalized video on demand experience. That's broadly, guys, what I had to share. Happy to, now take any questions, any queries that you may have.
Thank you so much, sir, for this insightful session. I'm sure next time we watch Netflix or any OTT platform, we will have that eye for detail to understand these things in much more interesting terms. So we can open the floor for the Q&A.
Sure.
Students can raise their hands one by one. But due to the paucity of time, we may take one question and we can collate the other questions and send it over to you, sir.
Happy to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Vedant, you can ask a question.
Good morning, sir. Despite
Good
of
morning.
having several certification mechanisms, there is still a problem for the OTT platforms that their content may agitate certain sections of society. So, can machine learning be used to gauge the acceptability of the content before it is launched on the platform?
Yeah. So that is there are two broad applications of machine learning when it comes to VOD. One is obviously the recommendation that we talked about today. The other is actually called moderation. So what we have started to do in various shapes and form is to not just decide what you should watch, but also decide what you should not see on the platform, which is the moderation engine. Moderation engine typically, so the basic form of moderation is to remove nudity, extreme action, religious, sentimental, content. However, as and as engineers that you are, you will appreciate the fact that any data or any machine learning system is as good as what data is being fed into it. it's shit in, shit out kind of a model, right? So the problem with most of the moderation engines currently is that as a moderation engine, it's very difficult to train because you just never know who will get offended with what, right? So the learning, which is the root form of building a machine learning, is extremely difficult and extremely slow process. We are only able to learn what data tells us, right? Now, in fact, if I just look at U4, which I see on the screen, I don't know what content will offend whom and for what reason, right? So while systems have been built, but because the data collection and interpreting that data about extreme reaction is so difficult to understand or comprehend, that the engines are not able to yet become as smart as the recommendations engine right now. But what we have done, or what we have been able to at least achieve, is the basic hygiene. Let's not show nude content. Uh, let's not show, let's say, extreme action or extreme violence content. Let's not show maybe abusive language. So in certain cases, those hygienes have been able to be achieved, but not to the extent which can address, let's say, regional sentiments or religious sentiments. This is very difficult in India, by the way. So in some of the other regions, it may be relatively easier, where you have lesser number of language demarcations, lesser number of regional demarcations, and lesser number of political demarcations.
Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful and insightful session. I'm sure you have given brilliant ideas and thoughts which the students will reflect upon, and definitely everyone has learned a lot from today's session, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, guys. I wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a nice day.